Hi, I'm William Guheider, Assistant Dean with Fine and Performing Arts. We're here with Philip Hii, our guest artist, for Friday, April 10th concert. We're excited to have you here, and we're also joined with Hector Rodriguez, instructor at UTRGV, and Jaime Garcia, our guitar instructor at South Texas College. Philip, it's great to have you here.
It's good to be here.
Jaime, you had a question.
Yes, so Philip, you've written extensively about the guitar technique and your philosophy on the guitar, and you have a lot of articles and some books written. So one entitled Art of Virtuosity. Can you talk about how this came to be, the book?
Well, The Art of Virtuosity is a book that I had actually wanted to write when I retired. But about 10 years ago, a friend of mine started playing the guitar, and he had lots of questions. And so in the process of trying to answer his questions, I found that I was really saying all those things that I wanted to put in the book. So I thought, well, maybe I should just start writing the book now. So that's the main reason. The primary reason for the book is because I feel that there are basic principles behind everything we do, basic principles behind how we play guitar. And as a teacher myself, I feel that it's very important to recognize these principles first, so that if you have a firm grounding in the basic principles, then you wouldn't get distracted by other stuff. Because sometimes we get too carried away by methodologies, by theories, and then we forget the basic principles.
Excellent. Hector, you have a question for him?
About the first piece in the program, I found this interesting. I never heard about this work by the composer Günther Becker. Is it Metathesis, right?
Metathesis, yes.
Tell me about that work.
Well, I studied with Professor Günther Becker quite a few years ago in Germany. I stayed a year and a half in Germany at the Robert Schumann Institute, and he was the composition professor there. And he's actually very well known in Germany and in Europe. So it was really an honor to study with him. I found out that he had a special interest in the guitar. He had written a flute and guitar duo, and also a solo guitar piece. So without telling him, I ordered the piece. Now when it came, it was a huge cardboard. I should have brought it. Huge cardboard, and in the middle there is another piece of cardboard that's taped to the first piece, and you have to turn it around. And so basically, the piece is an aleatoric piece. Meaning that it's pretty free. So he wrote a bunch of musical fragments, very 12-tone, very atonal. And so as a performer, it's up to you to play with it. And wherever you roll the thing, you can play in that order. So when I got it, I brought it to him, and I said, "How do you play this thing?" And he explained it to me just the way I said it, but I said, it's really difficult to bring this cardboard to my concerts. I would like to see if I could copy all the fragments and paste them on the 2 sheets of paper, and so I'm perfectly free to rearrange them any way I want. He said, "Sure, go ahead." So that's what I'll be doing tomorrow.
I noticed on the program that it's quite a diverse program tomorrow
Yes.
evening, and I wonder if you could speak to how you organize a program yourself. How do you go about actually organizing and thinking in terms of what it is you want to perform or not perform, depending. I wonder if you could speak to that, because we do have students that are at a point where they're beginning to think about, how do I put a program together in terms of. Would you kind of talk to us a little bit how you do this?
Yes. The program to me is like a piece in itself, a work of art. So there has to be enough variety. I'm from the school that believes that it's got to be also entertaining. Of course, we're doing art music, but it's got to have enough variety. And 1 hour of guitar music can be a little long if all you play is from one particular style. So anyway, I mixed them up. I decided to have this aleatoric, very 12-tonal music, to start the concert with. And then I played two Baroque pieces. And after that, I played beautiful work based on that theme by Handel, the Harmonious Blacksmith, by Giuliani. And then the next piece, I decided to arrange a simple study by Tarrega. Tarrega has a special relevance to me because my teacher studied with a student of Miguel Yobel. So I've always found that lineage very, very interesting, to say the least. So I did my own arrangement of a study, and then ending with 3 studies by Villalobos, which is modern enough, but not so modern that people don't want to. And then second half, I believe that every guitar concert has got to have some Spanish pieces. So Turina is my favorite. And so I have 2 pieces by Joaquin Turina. Now, after that, I decided to have 2 pieces which I just recently arranged. They're from a movie by, well, the title of the movie is The Fabulous Life of Emily Poulain. And so I love the film score. So there's this beautiful waltz, La Amélie, and I decided to arrange that about 2 years ago. And just about a month ago, I decided to arrange the other one, which I had planned to do for some time, but I decided to finally get to do it just a month ago. And then of course Barrios, you know, I always try to play some Barrios in my concerts because I believe he's so unique. His music just really touching in the heart. And I'm playing 4 my favorites.
What challenges do you face as an educator, as a guitar teacher, with beginner students at college level?
I think the challenge as a teacher is always to try to find the students' innate musicianship, because I believe we're all born with some innate abilities, and the teacher's job is to try to recognize this and bring it forth. My philosophy of teaching is really based on trying to get the student to discover their own strengths, their musicality, as opposed to trying to impose my ideas of what is good guitar playing, you know, regardless of what the teacher, the student does.
I'm curious, we have, as you know, there are many young people, either beginning in middle school or in high school, that they take up the guitar in general just for their own entertainment, many times developing self-taught technique.
Yes.
And then as they get closer to going to college, some of them discover that maybe they want to do this on a more serious level. I'm curious what your approach is like in terms of taking a young man or a young woman who's had a few years in a garage band, let's just say, who's very, very gifted as well, but helping them transition into what we would look at as more formal technique, because we're talking about now changing perhaps hands positions or these kinds of things that might be relevant to the technique. I'm curious how you help a student make that transition to a more formal guitar technique.
Well, that is really the core of what we do, isn't it? Because most of the students that come in have that kind of experience, like garage band, maybe they play a few chords. So yes, it is a challenge, and I've mentioned that I really believe that the most important thing is to recognize what the students have, and as opposed to what they don't have. And for instance, I had a student, at 16 he had won guitar competition at the Guitar Center, supposedly for shredders. So when he came to me, he was already a brilliant electric guitar player. I could see so many possibilities. But of course his right hand was, you know, he was playing with a pick. So my first task was to develop his right hand. Now, developing the right hand is a very tricky thing, because there's so many variables involved in the right hand. Just a position. If you force the student into one position, then they're going to get constricted by those so-called, let's say, rules, if you say some rules. And for example, some teachers have very strict ideas on how the finger should move. And for me, the real art of guitar playing is so subtle that you can't narrow it down to one or two things, such as move from here, move from there. It's so complex. So with this student, I basically just let him loose. I gave him pieces and pieces that challenged him. And of course, watching very carefully that he doesn't develop any bad habits. And there are some bad habits that I would try to watch out for. For instance, students who play with a pick tend to play this way. So when they pluck with the fingers, they pluck like this. So this is this is kind of locked in. So trying to get them to relax the whole fingers. So those are one of the things I watch out for. And the other thing is, when the thumb starts going inside. So I only have one or two very basic rules, which is that the hands got to be relaxed, and then the thumb's got to stay outside. And I find that anybody who follows these rules is automatically develop a really relaxed technique.
Did you just hear that? Hector, do you have a question for him?
About your arrangements, what do you look for when an arrangement says, so your arrangement for the Toccata Fugue by Bach, which is a complex piece for organ, monumental work, right?
Marvelous performance.
How do you get the sense of the music, to get into the guitar? What is the element you look for? How you transcribe?
Yes.
What is the process?
Well, the most important thing is you got to make it sound like a guitar piece. You don't want to make it sound like an organ piece transposed to the guitar. But good question. There are a lot of things in that particular piece, the Toccata and Fugue, that really works so well on the guitar. For instance, the theme to the fugue with the open strings. My task is to understand the spirit of the piece. What's he trying to say to me? And then try to reduce it to the most basic elements, but not so basic that it's too simple. Still challenging, still as full as you can make it, as full as the guitar can hold, and work with it. It took me quite a while, a lot of trial and error. You try out some things, it didn't work. So the basic principle is to make it sound like a guitar piece.
Question, Hein?
Yeah. Going back to your books, you have other articles and short little articles. One called "How to Be a Virtuoso in 60 Days." It's really interesting, really cool. Some really cool things. And one of the things that I like, and I actually tell my students that, and I refer to you a lot, and that you need to go to his website, and a lot of really good ideas. And one of them is, the practicing for 5 hours a day, and then if you stop at 2 or 3 hours, after that, that's when the real magic happens, and that's when you start to see a lot of good things happening. So I don't know if this is for out of line, but maybe you can share some of your routine, or what do you do when you practice?
Yes.
And do you still practice for 5 hours a day?
Well, when I get ready for concerts, I do.
Yeah.
5 hours a day is just another way of saying all the time.
Yeah.
All the time, you have a free, hour, even maybe half an hour, pick up the guitar and play. It becomes a lifestyle. But I know that book is very provocative. And why not 30 days, right? But actually, I made it 60 days because that's the window for the refund. Because I always feel, if you're not happy with my book, I'm going to return you. But you see, the basic principle, again, is that for me, virtuosity is a state of mind. It's a state of mind. So you got to get into that state of mind, and once you get into that state of mind, everything just follows naturally. For example, one of the things that I mentioned in the book is that virtuosos make things easy. They don't believe in making things more difficult. So, for instance, I learned this from John Williams. When I was young, I studied his recordings religiously. I transcribed them, and I realized that he took out a lot of notes that other lesser guitar players were struggling to play. And he's the best among them, and he just took out. Yes, so for me, the lesson in all this is that it exists at a state of mind where it's no longer about adhering faithfully to the written notes, but more trying to get to the spirit of what you're trying to do. And then doing it in the best way you can, which means sometimes eliminating notes, sometimes refingering things, but all in an attempt to make it, as easy as possible to play. And of course, the other state of mind is that practicing. You're constantly practicing. And actually, the book is pretty simple. I just divided up into the first section is in developing right hand virtuosity. The second section is in rhythm. Now, rhythm is the most overlooked factor in good playing, musicianship. Every good player you see has incredible rhythm, and yet students, they ignore that. They want to play fast, and you ask them to tap the foot or count, and they can't even do it because they don't even know where the beats are. So I spent a whole section on rhythmic training, and I have a few little hints on how to do it. And then at the end, of course, I wrap up with the state of mind. So in my mind, if you probably just take 30 days to get into that state of mind, but the problem is the understanding, the embracing of this state of mind. But yeah.
I'm curious, what kinds of either styles or genres are you most attracted to? I mean, obviously you play in many different styles, but are there very specific types of styles? You mentioned that in terms of certain composers that you're really drawn to, but are there some styles of music that resonate more with you as an artist?
Well, it's true. When I was young, like all guitar players, I played rock and roll.
Okay. So it's okay.
Yeah, we all came to classical through the back door.
Yeah. Good point.
But over the years, of course, I have I spent 3 years in Boston doing jazz. So for me, it's not a question of what particular genre. It's a question of how do you express yourself. Music to me is music. For instance, I'm very influenced by flamenco guitar technique because I believe it's exciting, it's passionate, and classical guitar to me is so sterilized. And I've seen concerts where the performer is so afraid to make a nasty sound. But if you have a painting that's only made out of yellows and reds and orange, it's so boring. And for me, I like to have a wide variety of colors, and sometimes even nasty colors. Because beauty is enhanced when there is a little ugliness around it. Yeah.
Very good point. Well, Jaime just spent some time in Spain studying flamenco style, so you just encouraged him to do some more of that.
So I'm okay with making nasty sounds.
That's right. Jaime, do you have a question, please?
Sure. Let's see. So the guitar has had, as you know, a lengthy tradition, and it's come a long way from the days of Segovia and the height that he's brought the guitar to. What state is the guitar in now, and what's the future for guitar?
Well, I'm not sure if I know what's coming next, but I can see that the guitar is already established as a serious concert instrument. So I think what we have to do is to make it relevant um, and to play concerts that have some. I come back to that entertainment value as opposed to just proving you're a big scholar or so it's hard to say. I still see a lot of interest among young players in the guitar, so I think it's just going to get more and more popular. But each one of us have to do the work.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm curious, we see so much now in terms of STEM subjects being emphasized. And I wonder if you might be able to speak to the idea how we know more and more through research how a young person who is also part of their education is the fine arts, they tend to do better, they tend to be much more well-rounded. And I wonder if you could speak to the importance of the fine arts in the overall education of a young person.
I think music, of course, it's well established in research. I think they call it, is it the Mozart effect or something? Yeah. Music really has a very important role in how young people develop. And just to take the example of the discipline involved, to sit down and just work something out. In this day and age, we always hear of young people who have ADHD, so the ability to just sit down and work on something, for an hour or two, I think that's precious. I think that, every culture has to have music. And the culture that neglects music and the arts eventually just loses its soul. I think because we provide the soul. How do we provide it? Because basically art is the expression of ourselves. So when we are able to give voice to a culture through our arts, that's where the power lies in the arts.
That's beautiful. Thank you very much. I may or any other questions?
We've been talking about the technical aspects of the guitar and the music, but now talking about the artistic part of the guitar and the human part of the guitar. What is your the motor that moves you to play the guitar? What is your
The model?
The
Yes.
motor or your inspiration for
Yes.
to keep playing?
Well, I started with John Williams. When I was growing up, he was the god. And as I progressed, I began to be more influenced by other musicians. When I was in college in New Zealand, I actually studied a year with a piano player. And I really believe, well, my inspiration has really been mostly the piano, from piano players. One student of mine has asked me before, he said, "What's wrong with guitar players? Why do you always say listen to piano players?" I said, "There's nothing wrong." But I just believe for myself that piano players, their artistry is at a higher level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I
The
think.
sophistication. I was very influenced by piano players, mainly because of the very similarities, the similarities in sonority and two instruments that are basically percussive instruments. But for me, the piano tradition can be traced back unbroken to Bach even. Whereas guitar, there was a gap, there was a gap in our line, and somehow I think Tariga revived the whole thing. But the history of the guitar is just not as, but anyway, coming back to what moves me about the piano players, it is with especially with the understanding of musicality. For instance, the phrasing. The phrasing that's always based on the pulse. Guitar players tend to just go, sometimes, ignore the pulse. The other thing is their incredible sense of their understanding of the structure of the piece. For instance, when you play when I played the chromatic fantasy and fugue, or even the Chopin, it took me a long time to try to understand the structure of these pieces, because I realized these are not, small little pieces. Neither are they, equivalent to some of the bigger guitar pieces. These are just incredible works. So the architecture, I realized that you have to get into the architecture and the structure and lay them, so that there is a sense of forward movement, and then a sense of culmination. So all those things I learned from listening to piano players. Now there is one guitar player who influenced me a lot, and that's Leo Brown. To me, he is incredible. I have all his recordings. When I was young, I would listen to him religiously. And again, structure actually I learned from him. His first recordings called his debut recording with Deutsche Grammophon, where he played some very simple Gaspar Sanz pieces, Narvaez pieces. And I learned, for example, a simple piece at the beginning, you can have the same theme, but the beginning has to sound different from the ending, or the ending is different from the beginning, even though they're identical. So that's what I mean by structure.
Well, talking about you said the piano,
Yes.
Brown, I think he said, try to make sound the guitar like an orchestra. He said, I'll try to make the orchestra sound like a guitar.
Yeah, he is amazing. For instance, there is a joy in his playing, a freedom that I don't hear in many other people. The Scarlatti sonatas, the freedom and just that rhythmic, lilt. It's just a whole different level.
Any other questions that we can kind of wrap it up a little bit?
Yeah, maybe one more, I guess, specific question for teaching your students and with your program in Corpus. For example, I teach at STC. It's a 2-year program, and so it's kind of my job. It is my job to get them as prepared as possible, and then they have to go somewhere else and they have to finish up their degree. What do you look for in that kind of transfer student? What they should be doing, what they should be playing, at what level?
Yeah. Well, this is a tough job. I also teach at Del Mar College, and some of my students actually transfer to other schools. I'm not sure why, but but they do. So I consider my job, the first 2 years is get them ready, and that has to do with developing the right hand, because the right hand is usually the main weakness, and the development actually is about freeing up the right hand, freeing it up in every way. So to answer your question, what I be looking for, I think just good basic solid technique, especially arpeggio technique. See, arpeggio technique is the foundation of guitar technique, free stroke arpeggio technique. So usually in the first 2 years at Del Mar College, I make them go through etude number 1, etude number 11, which I'm playing tomorrow, and some of the Giuliani studies, Percussi studies, and Leo Brown studies. And then, so in the first 2 years, it's very intensive, just mostly technical development. So much so that they actually sometimes ask me, can I play something else? I'm tired of these studies. And of course, so I try to vary with some other, flamenco pieces. I like to give them flamenco. So yeah, just a basic understanding. But of course, I do have students that graduated from Del Mar College, 2 years, incredibly accomplished players. So if a student is fired up, he can do a lot in 2 years.
Well, we want to thank you so much, Philip, for taking time to visit with us. We're really very excited about having you down here and to perform at South Texas College. and to work with some of our guitar students. And so we again thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
You bet. Thank you.